Hello, my name's Host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People, and in this exciting episode, I'm going to discuss the issue of decidedness as a dichotomy by which we can understand our own identity and cognition. There are a lot of different cognitive theories, cognitive models, taxonomies, whatever you want to call them, ways to understand the nature of consciousness and the different ways in which it expresses. And that consciousness does express in different ways is undeniable. Sometimes we are lost in our heads thinking about something that's already happened and that we can't do anything about. Sometimes we are lost in our head thinking about a decision we have to make that we don't know what we're going to do yet. Those are distinct kinds of thinking. And really, they represent values about stories that we tell regarding ourselves and our own lives. And those stories reference two distinct kinds of problems. Problems related to things that have already been decided, things about which we have conclusions, and problems related to things that have not yet been decided. So the S functions are have a lot to do about things that have already been decided. To the extent that S is a proceed function, it's about executing steps in a plan that's already been determined. If you are asked to act in the moment, say a basketball game, the coach doesn't want you thinking about it at all. He wants you doing what your body's been trained to do in certain circumstances. So, in this circumstance, if you're a 3 point shooter and you have the ball past the 3 point line, you're supposed to shoot it. You're supposed to shoot it without thinking about it. It's your job. So, that's SE. It's about pulling the trigger on what you're supposed to do. When you're driving, oh, there's a lane closing here. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to change lanes. Okay, do that thing. It is not step that involves any decision making. Similarly, SI is about stuff that has already been decided. It too doesn't require any decision making. It requires you to keep track of stuff that you already know conclusively. I've got a dentist appointment on Tuesday. Don't forget to call down there about this other thing. When I get home, I'm going to clean up. That's an interesting statement. In the hands of an NE Dom, that statement means nothing. When I get home, I'm going to clean up. Is a statement I said to myself at work tonight. But it meant nothing. I knew it meant nothing when I said it. It was just this is a thought. In the hands of an SI Dom, it probably means quite a bit. I'm going to clean up when I get home tonight is a plan. And if they commit to that plan, they are going to clean up. So the fact that they said that took a lot more consideration for them than it did for me. I heard a very interesting thing that Casual IHP said, that for him to engage in brainstorming requires effort, that he has to turn on NE and use it in that fashion, and it requires application of will in a way that TI for him doesn't. Whereas NI, he finds, is more naturally paired with TI. So I thought that was interesting because it clarified for me why it is that I can't really keep track of my ideas very well. And it's because, as a default, and what's always going on is I'm trying out new possible ideas from each thing that I am discussing. This sort of explains why my discussions about a given thread of insight or whatever, they kind of go like I discuss it kind of half-assedly, then I discuss it again, cut out some of the bad stuff and keep some of the good stuff. I discuss it again until it sort of solidifies for me in a way that it doesn't require me to use a lot of SI. Because SI is really actively attending to the issue of keeping track of shit. And like I said, shit that's already been decided. Even if you're keeping track of a problem that you need to attend to, the fact that it's a problem you need to attend to has already been decided. Now, in contrast, the judging functions, I think, are used for both things that have been decided and things that are proposed and haven't yet occurred. So, with thinking, then, thinking is primarily, introverted thinking is mostly about consistencies. So, it's about understanding how a small picture plan plays in a big picture way. With extroverted thinking, it's understanding how a big picture plan happens in lots of little small picture ways. So, when dealing with issues that have already been decided, it's with TI you're asking why was it decided that way. With TE you're asking how do I do it that way. About things not yet decided. Well, it's interesting because, of course, we have to compare decided outcomes, I think, with TI to understand why we prefer one or the other. Or you might say we compare proposed outcomes against a model. TI users do. Or a series of models, or a set of models, or a meta model, or something like that. Whereas TE users aren't interested so much in the why, just as to the outcomes. Is it gonna do the thing we want it to do? And one of the downsides, TI's job then is to point out all the things you don't want it to do that it's also going to do. And TE doesn't like that in particular. TE wants to TE is about separateness and TI is about interconnectedness. The ability to isolate a system from a larger system is TE. And the ability to integrate a smaller system into larger systems is TI. Now for the Fs, I think it's about how that which has been decided impacts others. FI is about how that which has been decided impacts you. And then the ends are really the only thing that has anything to do with stuff that has not been decided, I think. I think those are the deciding functions. I've played around with this notion before that there's only really one judging function, is the intuitions, in NI and NE. And that the thinking and feeling functions are really justification functions. The introverted feeling is a way to concretize the impacts. You know, that's why ENTPs tend to live in such an unreal world. We don't intuitively feel the concrete impacts upon ourselves of our decisions. I recall going into 7-Eleven one time and walking out and thinking to myself, what was I feeling bad about when I walked in here? And the answer was, at that moment, I was feeling concern about financial things and this stuff that I had already done what I needed to do for it, but I just was waiting for it to happen. And there's nothing I could do about it. But the only thing I remembered when I came out of 7-Eleven was the bad feeling, the feeling of fear or worry. And um, at the end of the day, I suspect most of what we say and do and think is sourced at that level of it being tagged to some feeling deep down to make it relevant enough to remember. It's odd when you think about it that I think we're all told, regardless of our type, things like in romantic matters, trust your feelings, look inside of you and trust your feelings. And ENTPs will consistently respond to that as though they know what it means and or will try to implement that idea, and yet it's a bad idea and we don't know what it means. Whatever we think they're saying, we don't really understand what they're talking about. I've learned a lot about feelings and it how they aren't fair or logical at all. Like, it's not fair that I loved Lacey so much more than I loved Compton. That I was torn up when Lacey died, and I kind of shrugged when Compton died. That's not fair. It's not right. And it's not logical either, in the sense that I actually put a lot of energy into loving the shit out of Compton after Lacey died. And we just weren't very love compatible. The kind of love that Compton wanted to give was different than the kind of love I had to give, and vice versa. And just we weren't very compatible. But that's incredibly selfish. It seems on its surface to it seems so arbitrary that if Lacey deserved so much of my soul when she passed, then didn't Compton deserve a proportional amount or something? But that's feelings for you. So yeah, stuff that's decided, stuff that ain't decided. Intuition deals with stuff that ain't decided. The other things deal with stuff that's decided. Maybe something like that, or at least assumed. That's what assumption is. Let's pretend something is decided that's not decided. And that's this episode of Talking with Famous People. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it a great deal.